In the last lesson, we discussed a few more camera settings, and that was the end of that section. In today's video, we're going to begin the lighting section, and we're going to now start to light up the scene properly. Okay. The first thing that I'm going to do in here is to organize the outliner. I'm going to select the grass assets, these 3 grass assets, and I'm going to delete them. I'm going to also remove this level sequence as well. I'm going to remove this character, and I'm going to also delete the demo camera. Okay, let's create a new folder for this foliage actor. I'm going to rename this as foliage. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all my lights and delete them so that I can light up the scene properly from scratch. So in order to bring in some lights into the scene, you can also click on this get content icon and select different sort of lights from here. But what I like to do in here is to just simply go into window and add my lights by using the environment light mixer. In here we have a few lights. Let's first of all bring in the atmospheric light. The atmospheric light is actually the same thing as directional light. Let me bring this up on Z-axis and maybe just place it just about there. I like to keep my lights close to my subject so that I can tweak them whenever I want. Of course, it's just a personal preference. You can keep all the lights at origin if you want. So let me bring this window down. Okay, so the directional light is going to act as a sunlight and it's going to be the main light source in our scene. Okay, I'm going to bring up this window. If you select the directional light in here, you're going to see that we have some various settings. We're going to discuss all these settings, but let's bring in some more lights into the scene and then we'll come back to the directional light. So next up in here, let's add maybe a sky atmosphere. If I click on sky atmosphere, you can now see that we have this sky in our scene. Next up, let's bring in volumetric cloud and pretty self-explanatory stuff. You can now see that we have some clouds in the scene. Okay, so let's bring up skylight as well. You can now see that we have a very realistic looking skylight in our scene, and here's the difference. Okay, finally, I'm going to bring in the exponential height floor. Let me remove this environment light mixer, and you can see with this exponential height fog, we have a little bit of haze or fog in the scene. So I'm going to now select all these lights and move them to the folder of environment lights. And I'm going to select the directional light and let's now discuss a few properties. I'm going to bring this window up and bring this thing just about there. Okay, I'm going to save everything and let's discuss a few settings. First up in here, you can see we have this transform menu. By using this transform menu, you can move this icon anywhere you want, but this location parameter is just for the movement of this icon. It's not going to have any sort of impact on your scene. Same is the case with scale as well. You can scale this up all day if you want, but it's not going to have any sort of impact on your scene. Okay. The parameter that matters in here is the rotation parameter. If I rotate this thing on Z-axis, you can see now we have this movement of light in our scene. Same is the case for X and Y-axis as well. Okay. One more thing that I like to mention in here is that you can also press and hold Control L on your keyboard, and then you can just move your camera to, adjust the light to wherever you want. Okay. Maybe let's place it just about there, I guess. Yeah, I think it looks good. There we go. Sorry, I mistakenly created the point light. Okay. So as I said earlier, the important parameter in here is the rotation parameter. The location and scale parameters are not going to have any sort of impact on your scene. Okay. So let's adjust the rotation of this light. I'm gonna maybe move this thing perhaps just about there maybe. And yeah, where's the light source? Yeah. One more thing that I like to mention in here is that you can also get an idea about your light source by following this arrow, this white arrow. This white arrow is going to indicate where the light is actually projecting at the moment. For example, if the light is projecting like this, it means that the light is coming from the opposite side of this arrow. Okay. So if I look somewhere around here, we can see this light source in here. Okay. So if I move this thing maybe just about there. You can see now it is rotating the light source. So I'm gonna press Control L to adjust this, and I'm gonna place this light. I think I'm gonna have a better idea from here. I'm gonna press Control L once again, and maybe just about there, I guess. Yeah, I think it looks good. Okay. Uh, Sorry about that. Let me select the light source. I'm gonna enable the direction light filter in here so that I don't have to, go in here and select this from the viewport. Now I can easily select this from the outliner. Okay. So, yeah, I think it looks good, but maybe let's see. I'm gonna move this window just about there and just about there. Yeah, I think it looks good. Let me save everything, and then I'm gonna show you why I adjusted the light the way I did. I'm gonna split this window, and maybe perhaps I should rotate this thing fractionally more. Yeah, maybe somewhere around here. Okay. So why did I adjusted the light this way? You can see the clip that we have beforehand is now entirely covered by shadows. So why is that? Let me show you why. So in order to make your scene look cinematic, a general rule of thumb is, um, if you have a camera facing this side, facing here, let me go into the top view to demonstrate this easily. Right now you can see that my camera is taking shot from this direction, okay? So a general rule of thumb is to place your light opposite to your camera, okay? For example, right now you can see I have this camera in here, but my light is coming from here, okay? My light is coming from the opposite direction from here right now. So this is a general rule of thumb, and the reason for that is if you place your light opposite to the line of camera, then you bring in this very high quality looking shadows in the scene, which brings in some extra bit of detail and makes our shot look whole more cinematic. Okay. If I split this window and let me select this, sorry, I can select it from here. Let me select this directional light. Right now you can see this light is opposite to the direction of the camera. But if I place this light uh, somewhere around here, we're not going to have this really good looking shadows created by these cliffs or mountains or different assets. If I move this, let me rotate this light and bring it just about here. Now you can see we have this light directly in the line of camera. But now as you can see, we no longer have those good looking shadows for the cliffs or assets that we had beforehand. Our scene is completely covered by light and we don't have any cinematic good looking shadows in the scene. So that is why a general rule of thumb is to simply just place your light opposite to the direction of camera. For example, if I have my camera somewhere around here and it is facing this way, then I'm gonna have this light somewhere around here on the opposite side of the camera. Okay. So I'm gonna press Control Z to rotate this thing back. And now as you can see, now we have those good looking shadows in here. I'm going to give you another example and then hopefully you'll get this point. What I'm going to do now in here is to select this asset. You can select any asset you want, but I'm going to select this one, duplicate this on Z axis, bring it just about there. Maybe I'm going to have to move this window here. Okay. And come on. Yeah. And rotate this thing on Z, maybe, I don't know, maybe like so. And maybe scale this thing up on Z. And then I'm gonna move this just about, maybe just about there. Okay. Yeah, just about there. And now if I'll enlarge this window and move ahead on the sequencer, you can now see that we have some really interesting looking shadows in the scene. Let me disable this filter. If I hide this asset from here, you can now see that our surface is entirely covered up by light and it doesn't look so good. But if I unhide this asset, You can now see we have this really good looking shadows in the scene, which is giving us some extra bit of detail that we need to make our shot look whole more cinematic. Okay. If I split this window, and what I can do in here is to just bring it just about maybe there. To be honest, I'm not sure, but maybe just about there. And duplicate this asset, and maybe I'm gonna maybe select this one and place this thing just about there. I'm gonna move ahead on the sequencer, and I'm gonna select this asset, rotate it like so, and place it just about, let me see, maybe yeah, maybe rotate this thing like so, and place it just about I don't know, maybe around here, I guess. Let me move ahead on the sequencer. Not really. I'm gonna scale this thing down. Come on. There we go. And I'm gonna move this thing and place it just about there. Let me enlarge this window. I'm gonna make this one smaller. And let's see. Interesting. Maybe perhaps just about there, maybe, or yeah, maybe just like that. Okay. So you can see that the reason why I spent some time on placing this asset was because I wanted to bring in some interesting patterns over this surface. Okay. You can spend some more time on it and bring in some really interesting shadowy patterns in here on the surface to bring in some extra bit of detail in the scene. Because beforehand, our surface was entirely covered up by light and it wasn't looking so good. If I hide these two assets from here, you can see it looks flat. It doesn't look very high detailed. But if I press Ctrl H, you can now see we have a little bit of interesting shadows in here, which makes the shot a lot more interesting. Okay. I'm going to select this one, and I'm going to rotate it like so, and maybe bring in some interesting patterns in here. I'm going to select this one and place it just about there, and select this one first, and have these really good looking patterns at this point, somewhere around here. And then I'm going to move ahead on the sequencer, and then I'm going to bring in the second asset in here and place some really good looking patterns, maybe just about there. Perhaps maybe rotate this thing on Z, or I don't know. I'm going to select this one, and let's see. Maybe rotate it like so, and place this thing just about there. There. Okay. Yeah. Now you can see we have some really interesting patterns on the surface, and our surface now looks much better. So this is why it is necessary to place the light in such a way so that it brings in some shadows, and then you can take one step further and place these assets to add a little bit of interesting patterns on the surface. Of course, you don't necessarily have to use these assets. You can use any asset if you want. These assets are not even visible in the shot. They're just there to add a little bit of detail on the surface. Okay. So if I select the directional light and bring it just about there, maybe somewhere around here. Yeah. You can see now we no longer have those shadowy patterns on the surface or in the scene. It looks a little bit boring, to be honest. But on the other hand, if we place this light on the opposite side of the camera, you can now see our shot looks a whole more cinematic. Okay. I'm gonna save everything and let's move on. So next up in here, I have intensity, pretty self-explanatory. If I want to increase my intensity, I can type in 15 in here, maybe 20 if I want. But for now, I'm just gonna keep it at 10. Next up in here, I have light color. Let's say if I want to change the light color and, maybe uh, bring it just about there and give this Martian planet sort of feel to your shot. I often like to tweak the light color for my shots depending on what I want. So this tool can come in really handy to give an interesting feel to your shot. Okay. So next up in here, I have a source angle. Let me get closer to maybe just about there. If I bring down the source angle, you can now see that we have very hard shadows on the surface. But if I adjust the slider way up, you can now see that we have a lot more diffused and soft shadows. Okay. If you have an overcast lighting in your scene, or maybe sunset where the sun is pretty close to the horizon, then you can, slightly increase this angle. Okay. But for the most part, I think the default value works just fine. Let's move ahead. Temperature, effects world, cast shadows, pretty self-explanatory stuff. Yeah, this is going to be interesting. Indirect lighting intensity. I'm going to enlarge this window, and if I move somewhere around here, maybe just about there, and increase this number, you can now see that we have a little bit more bounce lighting in the scene. So in similar situations where you want to increase the brightness of a particularly darker spot in your shot, you can increase the indirect lighting intensity. For example, you can do that for the spaceship. If I bring this number down, you can see it looks pretty dark at the moment. But if I increase this number, you can now see we have a lot more bounce lighting and it looks a little bit brighter. Okay. So if that's what you want for some reason, or if that's what you're looking for, you can increase this number. But for the most part, I generally like to keep this at default. Okay. Next up in here, I have volumetric scattering intensity. Let me go back here. And to demonstrate this, I'm going to have to enable volumetric fog. I'm going to disable this filter and select exponential height fog. And I'm going to go down here and check this box, volumetric fog. This is going to allow us to have a much more localized fog in the scene. You can see beforehand the fog is there, but it kind of looks, pitch flat. But if I check this box, now we have a little bit depth with our fog. Okay. Of course, we're going to discuss these settings in a separate video on exponential height fog. But in order to explain the volumetric scattering intensity, I have to enable volumetric fog. Okay. So in here, you're going to see if I increase this number, we have a lot more scattering of light in our scene. But if I decrease this number to, let's say, 1, the default value, we're going to now have much less scattering of light. Okay. So I just generally keep this at 1, but if you want some very thickish sort of fog, you can increase this number. Let's move on. Next up in here, we're going to discuss light shaft occlusion. If I check this box, I'm going to have to enlarge this window. Maybe not. Okay. Let's move just about there. And if I check this box, light shaft occlusion, you can now see now we have this really good looking guard rays in here. You can now see the difference as well. Hopefully you can see them in here, but let's move to maybe just about there. You can now clearly see these light shafts coming in. If you want, you can increase this number to make these shafts look a little bit softer, I would say. Yeah. So if that's what you want, you can increase this number. Okay. If I check this box, we have a little bit of light shaft bloom as well. I generally just keep this disabled, but I do love the guard rays, so I'm just going to keep it enabled. So next up in here, I think we have, cloud scattered luminance scale. Let's say that if you want to add a little bit of tint to your clouds, and of course, because of that, you're going to have that color in your scene as well. So let's say that if you're looking for something like this, maybe just about there, to add just a little bit of warmth to your shot, you can adjust this like so and press OK. So these were a few important settings for the directional light. So that's it for this lesson, and in the next lesson, we'll discuss some more lighting parameters of different sort of lights in the scene. Okay. So I'll see you guys in the next one.